The universe is so big, it's almost beyond our understanding. Not just billions of stars and planets, but billions of galaxies. So far away, we've only begun to spot them in the distance. Then there's this place. An amazing place filled with amazing creatures, including the most amazing creatures of all. Sometimes frustrating, confusing, maddening. There's no end to the words we can use to describe ourselves. We can be remarkably destructive and creative, sometimes at the same time. And we look ahead. Even though we never know exactly what's going to happen tomorrow, we can't wait to find out. Here on Earth, the People Planet. I'm Kim Christensen at the Norland Library at the University of Colorado Boulder, where I spent more than a few hours studying. 9 News has partnered with 9 experts at CU to help us understand ourselves in a project we're calling the People Planet. This is the first edition of Charles Darwin's famous On the Origin of Species from 1859, which is one effort to answer our first question. How did we get here anyway?
Through the, what's this machine? The phoropter. Let's see what happens.
These guys have been around a little while as they learn everything from the alphabet to the meaning of life.
Guess what?
They are among the latest examples of the most fascinating things we know about.
A wolf won't bite. Oh, excellent.
They're the examples of us.
Thumbs up, Mr. Bob.
The Earth is about 4 billion years old. In those terms, we just got here. A few million years, but in geologic terms, that's only a few seconds. Most of us don't even understand.
It's amazing how much we actually know about human evolution now compared to what did 10, 20, much less 50, 100 years ago. Despite all this knowledge, it's remarkable how mysterious much of it remains.
Most experts believe human beings first appeared in Africa. For millions of years, we lived and died in a frightening world surrounded by beasts and whatever could easily kill us without much of a fight.
These challenges, these things that almost kill us, in a sense, those are the things that make us what we are. And I think it's very possible throughout most of our existence, we were hanging on by a thread, metaphorically.
But we did hang on by that thread and thrived. We have no idea how many people there were a million years ago, but in 10,000 BC, maybe a million or 2. 10,000 years later, by the year 1, we were up to 200 million and gradually grew until the modern age. Then 1 billion people in 1804, 2 billion in 1927, 3 billion in 1963, almost 5 billion in 1983. In 2015, 7 billion and counting. The question is, how did that happen?
Between 150,000 years ago, humans spread out from the area where they evolved to all of the Earth, to a range of incredibly diverse climates where some areas are warmer, some are colder. The only way people could do that is by inventing technologies that help them to cope with these different environments.
Technology. Think about the role it plays in your life. Cars, electricity, refrigerators, microwave ovens, computers, cell phones. We're so used to technology, we can't even imagine life without it.
Want to bounce?
These guys certainly can't imagine what life was like before they had all this to work and play with. But in the beginning, technology was less about fun and more about something more basic, like survival. Think of human history as a long road. The first stop on the technology highway millions of years ago. Tools made of stone, wood, antlers and bones that helped us use animals for food and protect us from the world. For a lot of that trip, that's all we had. Then Just yesterday, we gradually started making all the things we take for granted today. Estimates to when vary, but the control of fire by humans was an important early discovery. Then, 50,000 years ago, clothes, 12,000, boats, 10,000, agriculture, 8,000, bricks, 5,000, the wheel, 3,000, iron tools.
And if you really think about it, most of the things that we think of as, like, what defines us, computers, space travel, cars, and these are things within the last few hundred years. It's not even 1,000.
Now we're speeding up. 300 years ago, the Industrial Revolution began that started by producing machines, steam engines, typewriters, submarines, the internal combustion engine, cars, planes, spaceships, computers. What will they think of next?
Zenith's famous 9-band transoceanic, the world's most exciting radio.
We have survived remarkable things. We've done, created amazing technologies. But I think that that's taking what is a three-dimensional object and looking at it in 2 dimensions. We are so much more than that.
Meaning the other products of our imagination, like art, music, architecture, games, all the things we don't need but want to make life interesting. As for technology, though, it isn't always for the better.
I would not say that technology itself is intrinsically bad, because it is an artifact of our creation, and it is a manifestation of whatever the user's intentions really are. So if ISIS uses technology, they are probably thinking it is for a good goal, where we're going, this is terrible that they have so much technology.
Because all the technology in the world can't change the fact that people will always be people.
There's greed, there's favoritism, there's envy, there's fear. All the things that make us, human are the things that make us messy, and technology isn't messy. Technologies are ones and zeros, and at the end of the day, kind of abhors messiness.
And remember all those billions of people we talked about earlier? Well, it turns out that one of the key reasons for the rise of technology, more people, more ideas, more solutions to complicated problems.
A society at the scale of a hunting and gathering group could not maintain enough knowledge of the world to make a cell phone. If the world population were suddenly cut in half, we would lose a lot of our technology within a couple decades. We would no longer be able to have cell phone networks the way we have them today.
What could cut the world's population in half? War, disease, climate change, asteroids. Mankind has always had a tenuous relationship with our little spot in the universe.
There are limits to what the planet can provide.
When we return, man versus the world. We've seen it all up close. Fires, floods, storms. They all threaten to wipe us off the earth. And yet the earth is also a great place. Maybe the only place we can live.
I think the more you understand how the planet functions, the more you're amazed at how well it functions. This really is a wonderful place. And the more you understand it, the more you realize that maintaining it as a wonderful place is not a simple thing to do.
Not simple or easy, because just as Earth can be dangerous and frightening to us, we're constantly changing the Earth simply by living on it.
It's very clear that we're going to have a footprint on the planet. I know there are still people who would like to say, no, we can live on the planet without really affecting the planet. That's not true. I think we are going to change climate regardless of the fuels we use. We're going to change the planet's surface regardless of what we do, because we have to.
So far, Earth appears able to support 7 billion people, maybe even more. But somewhere there's a limit to the food, water, and land necessary to keep that many of us alive. The question is, do we reach what experts call sustainability in a good way or painfully? Through disease, starvation, war.
Personally, I think we're smart enough and we're sophisticated enough and we have enough technology to get there elegantly. But there's no guarantee of that.
For instance, climate change can lead to large numbers of people needing to move away from rising seas.
And we know what happens when you bring a lot of people together that are desperate, that are poor. These are breeding grounds for extremists. And we need to be very careful about that. It's the reason why the Pentagon spends a lot of money on climate change.
The Earth is crowded, and we're living on it longer. Ancient life expectancy is difficult to measure. Life was often short and hard. Before 1800, we lived between 20 and 30 years. By the 1850s, the average life expectancy was up to a little less than 40 years. By the 21st century, that increased to 67 years globally, and nearly 80 in developed countries like the United States. All of which means we're healthier and better able to cure ourselves when we get sick.
It wasn't long ago, in 1960s, 1970s, there was a real genuine thought that we could eradicate infectious disease, essentially from the planet.
But our brushes with Ebola and measles recently made it clear that we're still vulnerable.
I think that the one mistake that humankind tends to make throughout history, sort of a lack of humility when we approach these problems, particularly as they relate to health.
We believe we're invincible. We believe in technology. We talk about the importance of believing in ourselves. People have also proven very willing to believe in a higher power, and if not equally willing to disagree with each other about it.
Organized religion both has contributed to positive things for human beings as well as contributed to conflict and strife.
When we come back, we'll talk about one of the most fascinating mysteries in the history of humanity, the search for God.
Jesus, everything revolves around you.
Most Americans and billions of others around the world believe in one God, just not always the same God. Why?
There's not a simple answer to that question, although people have tried to give simple answers to that question.
It's hard to find a neighborhood anywhere without a place of worship.
Good morning.
Right around the next corner.
There was a thesis, a secularization thesis, that was prominent for a time in the later part of the 20th century, which said, yes, as we're entering the modern era, we're becoming more and more modern, religion is going to be on the decline. We're not going to need religion anymore. We have science, we have more secure political systems, ostensibly at that time, right? So religion's going to wither away. And in fact, in the 21st century, we see that's not the case. That hasn't happened. Religion isn't going away, but instead religion is still thriving, it's still going strong.
Strong, even in America, a land where we often measure happiness and peace in dollars and cents.
The United States still has one of the highest rates of religious participation among Western industrialized nations in the world. That's a product of our own unique heritage as a country.
Of course, not everyone believes in God. Atheism is a strong belief system of its own, and atheists' beliefs in lack of God depend on inconsistencies in religious stories. While the Christian belief in a virgin birth and resurrection from the dead, for instance, requires faith in something that can't be proven using science. The question then becomes, what explains the willingness of believers to believe whatever they believe?
I think, again, we don't want to say there's one primary reason why people profess a faith. I think that if we look, we need to take each person case by case, and when you look closely at a person, you'll come up with a lot of different things.
A lot of religions will claim, and their followers will attest, that they provide a sense of purpose in a kind of often confusing and painful existence.
One of the great ironies of religious belief is that in addition to providing meaning and purpose, it also creates confusion and pain, or worse.
Flames exploded out the front of the World Trade Center.
9/11 and ISIS are the most recent examples of radical Islam, leading to shocking and barbaric behavior.
We have to ask ourselves, what is the threat of ISIS coming from? Does it come from the fact that those militants, those extremists, are Muslim? Clearly not. Does it come from the fact that they're brown-skinned? That's obviously not the case. It comes from their ideology. And so the enemy for the United States is not Muslims, it's not Arabs, it's not brown-skinned people, it's the ideology of ISIS, which is to impose its will on other people.
My own sort of experience with this is that it's never really just religion that causes people to become intolerant. It's often politics of some sort or other.
Politics and religion, war and peace. The question is, can we ever stop fighting about God?
The short answer is yes. I even see it in the fairly near future. As humans evolve and get to know themselves better and understand what it's like to be human, then humans will eventually not fight over religion.
If there is one thing people have proven again and again throughout history is that we really like to disagree with each other about politics, about religion, and especially about each other.
Men and women, young and old, black and white, rich and poor. People are different.
People have a natural desire to categorize. We're categorizing machines. That's how we make sense of the world.
We call it diversity, gender, skin color, language, culture. All these differences make the world an interesting place. But those same interesting differences can somehow become a bad thing.
The question of why does skin color cause so many problems? The answer is because humans make those categorizations and then use those categorizations to create categories of people who receive certain rights or are denied certain rights, who are at the top of the socioeconomic ladder or at the bottom.
And if you don't do something about it, we will have no alternative.
It has happened again and again throughout history. One of our most vivid and painful examples is nearly 250 years of American slavery that ended only after a civil war that almost destroyed the country. It did not end the difficulties created by our differences.
Of course, we don't have the buying and selling of people based on their skin color in the United States anymore. We don't have legally segregated schools, but racism has morphed, it's changed, and it's reappeared, as we can see in the events of the past few months.
In 2014, the deaths of Michael Brown in Ferguson and Eric Garner in New York brought the national conversation about differences back to the top of the list.
I do think a dialogue needs to occur.
And it has not been an easy conversation.
It illustrates that some of us really don't respect each other, really don't value each other. And it illuminates it more than anything, because it's been going on.
Many people see the problem in terms of lack of understanding, because people of different colors and different backgrounds often don't understand each other, which makes communicating awkward but critical.
Because again, people are being made uncomfortable, which is a good thing, to make people uncomfortable, because that's how we have change.
Rather than thinking about racism in terms of a ladder in which we climb ever higher to levels where racism is less and less reduced, we should think about racism as a river that meanders and flows. It intensifies at certain moments, and this may be one of those moments.
But these moments of difficulty, when we see the same event and disagree what happened and what it means, can also be opportunities to learn about each other and why we struggle to get along.
Solving all of these problems, disagreements about religion, about skin color, about how to take care of our planet, about how to get technology to work for and not against us, won't be easy.
Are we moving toward a future filled with peace or conflict? Will we increase our understanding of each other or argue about our differences instead? Will a crowded planet last forever? We'll be back right after this with the conclusion of The People Planet.
Yeah, humans, we're a tricky thing.
There's greed, there's favoritism, there's envy, there's fear.
Race is not a divisive issue. Racism is.
I think that the one mistake that humankind tends to make throughout history is a lack of humility.
We have Netflix. That makes things much easier.
Technology's already got away from us.
I don't think there's anything inherent about religion that produces conflict. Neither is there anything inherent about religion that produces peacefulness and tranquility and harmony.
People are being made uncomfortable, which is a good thing, to make people uncomfortable, because that's how we have change.
And I'm also convinced that there's a moral compass in us and that we want to leave the world a better place for our kids.